People of the state of Michigan versus Willie James Jr. Motion for a new trial and amendment of judgment that you filed. Is that correct, sir?
This is where everything comes crashing down. A convicted man stands before the court asking for a second chance, a new trial that could rewrite his fate. But the stakes? They couldn't be higher. Allegations of misconduct, questions about justice, and a brutal case involving a missing body. Did the system fail him? Or is this exactly where justice catches up? Stay with us, because what unfolds in this courtroom isn't just legal. It's deeply personal and absolutely chilling.
Jurors, we watch jurors very closely, and again, we saw no juror misconduct as alleged. These are appellate issues, and certainly.
Right out of the gate, the judge shuts this down, and that's significant. A motion for a new trial is not easy to win, but here, the court is crystal clear. No prosecutorial misconduct, no juror issues, nothing that would justify reopening the case. What the judge is essentially saying is, even if we replayed this entire trial, the outcome wouldn't change. And notice the mention of appellate issues. That's the defendant's next move. So here's the question. Do you think this was a fair denial, or should every serious case get a second look no matter what?
James wishes me to bring this issue to the court's attention and preserve it, and I told him that I would do so on his behalf. And I believe his argument is that he was essentially ready to be off or discharged from parole, and he was kept on there for another month while this matter was being investigated but not yet charged, and he was charged with it the following month, and therefore he believes that he should be entitled to the credit that he has served while this case is pending because of that. Again, my reading of the statutory and case law does not support that, but he wished me to make that challenge on his own behalf, and I told him I would do so.
I know no situation, case law, or statute that provides for that on behalf of the.
This part might sound technical, but it matters a lot. The defendant is arguing for jail credit, essentially asking the court to count time served toward his sentence. But here's the problem. He was already on parole. In legal terms, that creates what's called dead time, meaning that time doesn't count toward this new sentence. Even his own attorney admits there's no law supporting the claim, but still raises it to preserve the issue for appeal. That's strategy, not expectation. So let me ask you, should time like this count, or is the system right to draw a hard line?
In this case, the record is rife with the defendant's interference with the administration of justice. Even if we look at the conduct of lying to the police in multiple interviews and misleading the police in multiple interviews, and even if we simply look at cleaning up the vehicle to remove bloodstains from it to deter police in their investigation, that would sufficiently score 10 points for OB-19. But understanding that the jury found this defendant culpable, guilty for this homicide, getting rid of Mr. Watson's body would be the ultimate act of interference with the administration of justice. So for those reasons, we ask that 10 points be scored for OB-19, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I'm opposing that request, and I believe it's properly scored where it is. Certainly the Department of Corrections in preparing this report would have been familiar, I think, with the facts as they were presented at trial or the facts as alleged.
OB-19 is properly scored at 10.
Your Honor, thank you. That will change the currently scored offense variable range from 65 to 100. That will ultimately change the range from an F2 to an F3, 360.
Now this is where things intensify. The prosecution is pushing to increase the severity score, and their reasoning is powerful. They're not just talking about the crime itself, but what happened after: lying to police, cleaning the vehicle, and most disturbing, disposing of the body. In legal terms, that's interference with justice. And if the judge agrees, it directly increases the sentencing range. This isn't just about guilt anymore. It's about how calculated and deliberate the actions were. Do you think covering up a crime should weigh just as heavily as committing it?
Tell us that. But you got to be a really evil person to think that's not relevant. Or if they don't have a body, then they can't prosecute me. And then turn everything around in the end. He could have told everything he said this year, he could have said it in 2021. He could have told us where the body was when we was looking for the body, when we didn't even know my son was deceased. So I just think he's a really evil person, and I hope he get everything that he deserves, because he do not deserve to be a free man, to walk the streets in the city that we live in, because I've never heard nobody say nothing good or positive on his behalf ever, especially in the past 5 years. I never met a person like that.
This is the moment that cuts through all the legal language. You can feel the pain, years without answers, without closure, without even a place to grieve. And that's something the law can't fully measure. When a body is never found, the idea trauma doesn't end, it lingers. What she's saying here goes beyond anger. It's about humanity, about dignity, about the basic right to lay a loved one to rest. And it raises a powerful question. Is hiding a body one of the most cruel acts after a crime?
Felonies and 7 misdemeanors. The defendant has served 2 lengthy terms in the Department of Corrections, and neither of them have rehabilitated him or educated him or helped him develop any empathy. And it turned homicidal in 1998 when this defendant was convicted in another state of 2nd-degree murder and 2nd-degree assault with a dangerous weapon. And we ask this court to consider for a moment, Your Honor, what does it mean when a defendant has murdered not just one person in his lifetime, but 2 people? A defendant who has already served a 10-year commitment in the Department of Corrections for murder in another state, then waits another 10 years and murders somebody in our community. I want you to think about that. Most people go through their life, Your Honor, managing not to murder anyone, let alone 2 people. And if they have the good fortune to be released and to get out of one murder conviction after a lengthy term of incarceration to come back into our community and commit another homicide, that indicates to us, Your Honor, that this is an unrehabilitatable, violent, and homicidal individual that stands before you. In fact, in 2018, this defendant was convicted of assault with intent to do great bodily harm and felony firearm in connection with shooting his girlfriend. Your Honor, he served another lengthy prison term in the Michigan Department of Corrections, and he was on parole at the time he murdered Andrew Watson. Think about that for a moment. And that then leads us to the instant offense. We want the court to consider some of the facts of this case. Consider, Your Honor, how much blood was inside of that vehicle. Blood that had soaked into the seats and all the way down into the rails of the front passenger seat. Blood that had soaked into the back carpet so densely that the defendant had to remove that carpet to avoid detection. Blood that was so soaked and throughout that vehicle, even after 2 professional cleanings. And what does that tell us, Your Honor? That this is a massive homicidal, lethal event that this defendant with a prior murder conviction perpetrated on this man inside of his car. And after that, Your Honor, as Ms. Watson so accurately said here today, the defendant then disposed of Andrew Watson's body. And we want you to think about for a moment, Your Honor, consider what it means to actually dispose of a whole human being. We have cases pending that have gone through the Ingham County Circuit Court in the last month where we see what happens when people are caught disposing of bodies. We see what that really looks like. But just because we don't have Andrew's remains, don't forget what that means to dispose of a whole human being such that he has vanished off the face of the earth for 5 years after an intense investigation. So this defendant is violent, he is homicidal, he is antisocial, he is an extreme risk of danger to our community. To deter this conduct, to protect others from this repeat offender, the defendant must be sentenced to a lengthy term in the Michigan Department of Corrections. Given the defendant's age, Your Honor, his parole status, it is the people's position that the defendant should be sentenced to a term of incarceration in the Michigan Department of Corrections of no less than 35 years on the minimum sentence. And that again takes into consideration his age. If he was 20 years old, we'd be asking for every day of 50 years. But given his age, at least 35 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections will ensure that he remains there essentially for the rest of his natural life. Thank you.
He had his day in court. He was able to tell his side of the story to the jury. The jury rendered a verdict against Mr. James. We have to respect that. Mr. James maintains his innocence, as is his right. Jury found that this was not an act of premeditation. The pre-sentence investigation report writer indicated that they found Mr. James to be polite and cooperative during his interview with them. And I would note that that largely mirrors my interactions with Mr. James as I've worked with him on this case over the last few years. I would ask the court to not exceed what the Department of Corrections recommended as an appropriate minimum sentence for Mr. James. And I would ask the court to sentence him, to consider sentencing him near the bottom end of his guidelines. Thank you.
Anything you want me to know, sir?
Gave my version of the miss.
I can't hear.
Gave my version of the miss, understand, see what you want to say.
Your history says it all, as does these actions, as does the mountain of evidence against you, sir. While you maintain your innocence, it is not to be believed. It is incredible testimony, as we say, which is not to be believed. The amount of blood, the amount of effort you went through to hide your crime, cleaning the car, not once, but twice. Disposing of an entire human being without a trace, that takes some planning and forethought. That takes some knowledge. You have the history. Your second homicide. And in between that, a lot of violent crimes. You haven't learned your lesson. This court does not believe that you will ever be rehabilitated in this lifetime. We cannot tolerate any more gun violence in this community over anything, unless it's self-defense, and there is absolutely no evidence that what you did was done in self-defense. And you hid the body from the family. I hope that in the years that come, as you are locked up, you find it in your heart to reveal to the family where their loved one is. They deserve that. And it is only a cold-hearted, inhumane person who will continue to hide their loved one from them. I am remanding you, sir, to the Michigan Department of Corrections for 600 months to 1,200 months. That's 50 years to 100 years. I believe that is proportional to the homicide, to the hiding of the body, to the long-term criminal mindset that you've had that continues not to diminish, but to escalate. There is no credit because you were on parole. You will pay a crime victims assessment amount of $130. And waiving fines, costs, attorney fees because you are indigent. You'll pay a $68 state cost, and I'm holding in advance the cost of the funeral and or celebration of life. And that money will be paid to Andrew and Otella Watson, his parents. They deserve, at a minimum, that.
Your Honor, I have a notice of appellate rights form that has been filled out and signed by Mr. James. We would ask if the court could accept that for filing.
By the time the prosecution finishes, the picture is undeniable. A repeat offender, a history of violence, and a crime so severe it shook an entire family and community. The judge ultimately sentences Willie James Jr. to 50 to 100 years, making it clear this isn't just punishment. It's protection. No jail credit, financial penalties imposed, and restitution left open for the victim's family. This case highlights something deeper about the justice system. When patterns of violence repeat, the consequences escalate dramatically. Now we want to hear from you. Was this sentence justified or too harsh? If you found this case as shocking, as we did, make sure to hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more jaw-dropping courtroom breakdowns.